Welcome to BPTV. Thank you for tuning in. I'm your host, Andy Amrine, and today we're doing a Handy Andy segment, but a little different maybe than what you're used to seeing. We traveled outside of Bethel Park today, and we're here in Ambridge, PA. We're here at the factory, the world headquarters of Pit Moss. And Pit Moss is a product that I was introduced to a little over a year ago by Ashley. And so I thought would come out to the factory and meet Ashley and Brian, the marketing director and the CEO of Pit Moss, to take us on a little tour of the factory and how the product's made. But before we start that, just real briefly, what is Pit Moss?
Would you like to take it?
Go ahead.
All right. So Pit Moss is a revolutionary new potting soil that we made from recycled paper.
Okay.
So that's a really short, quick summary of what we do here at Pit Moss, but we're really just creating new, different potting soils that are made sustainably.
Well, I can't wait. I love the product, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how it's made. So thank you for the invite today. Well, with Pit Moss itself, I mean, basically, even your bread and butter line you have here. Tell me why somebody should use this instead of one of the other name brand potting soils.
Sure, and that we get that question all the time. Why do we need another potting soil on the market? What makes you guys so different? So a big part of what makes us unique is that our potting soils, the base of what makes up the bulk of this bag, is recycled paper. And when you go into look at any of the other products on the market, what makes up their bags is actually something called sphagnum peat moss. And sphagnum peat moss is usually mined or harvested in Canadian peat bogs, or in the UK, or there's some Michigan peat bogs, but mostly we're importing about 90% of our peat into the US. We're digging up those mines. There's some environmental problems with peat. They store a lot of carbon, more carbon than coal. So when we mine those bogs, you get a release of carbon in the atmosphere. And also just naturally, peat isn't the best media for growing plants. So it's naturally hydrophobic, meaning it repels water. So we're adding wetting agents to it. We're adding perlite, those little white specks you see in potting soil. We're adding that to provide aeration. We're adding things like wetting agents and surfactants and perlite, vermiculite, lime to counteract some of the acidity of peat. Basically all this stuff we've been doing with peat for, since the 60s. We really haven't made any grand changes to the way we pot our plants.
Yeah, but something you said is probably one of the biggest things that people don't realize when I'm talking to people and they say we use peat moss, and we use peat moss so it holds water. So that's not true.
Because we're adding a lot of wetting agents to it. So you are seeing things like, wetting agents or surfactants are applied to peat to make it absorb that water. And it can be really absorbent. The problem is it can dry out. Those wetting agents can basically run out of steam. They expire eventually. And also when peat absorbs water initially, it doesn't give it back to the plants as much. So it's not, we like to say we're not force feeding plants when you water Pit Moss. It just naturally allows the plants to absorb water, unlike peat where you're just constantly having to water it all the time.
So putting on here that you use 2/3 less water with Pit Moss compared to peat moss or any other type of potting soil. And that is, again, because of the agents you add to it?
Not the agents. See, with peat, they're having to add all that stuff to make it absorb water.
So with yours, it's all there. There's nothing that needs added
Absolutely. I like to say, if you imagine putting a paper towel on a puddle of water, how it just kind of wicks through the fiber of the piece of paper, that's what you get when you water a Pit Moss pot. It's just going to evenly saturate the pot, so all of the roots have access to water, to the air, to the nutrients that you're applying to it. If you look at a peat moss pot, they're all kind of fighting for the bottom. We're all accustomed to having runoff of our pots, right? It just drips out the side of the pot. That's normal. Well, it really shouldn't have to be that way if you're using the right media from the start.
To understand Pit Moss, we really have to understand raw materials. So this might not be the prettiest part of the factory, but without this, we have nothing. So tell us what we're standing here in front of.
Yeah, we think it's beautiful because this is all waste material that would go to the landfill today, and instead we're converting it into like real pit moss product that people can plant in and get better plant growth than other media. So we're diverting it from the landfill. We're bringing it here so that we can produce some great pit moss out of it.
So what all is here? We see magazines, newspapers. What are your raw
So when we
materials?
started 3 years ago, we only used what we call clean newsprint. So
Okay.
it didn't include any inserts, magazines, anything like that. Today, due to our R&D efforts, we're now able to mix in some magazines, some ad slicks, as well as cardboard. So as we grow the business, we expect to use more and more different feedstocks. But right now, we're very careful about the inputs that go into the pit moss product.
Okay, so this being all organic, how about the dyes or any chemicals or anything in these? Is this all clean product?
Yeah,
totally
we get
organic
that
for
we
it?
get that question a lot. Actually, both newsprint and cardboard are OMRI listed,
Okay.
meaning they're completely organic. The inks today are all vegetable based, mainly soy based, and even the glues in cardboard are typically like starch based glues today. So that's why both products are really organic.
Okay, but there's more in pit moss than just newspaper and cardboard, though.
Yeah, so we do have some super secret ingredients that we don't share
that's
with
fine.
people.
Yep.
But what we do add, typically to add more color, so our product doesn't look as gray as newsprint, is we use some natural organic composted material. That's good for both a little bit of a nutrient charge, as well as to give us a color and a smell that's really much more like soil that people are used to.
Okay, and a question I get asked quite often is the longevity of a product like pit moss. If they're planting it into flowers, do they have to add more next year? Because doesn't cardboard and newspaper just decompose real quickly?
Yeah, so it will decompose similar to peat moss, frankly, or even a compost. So we suggest people refresh it yearly, but that's mainly to get the really good aeration and water holding capacity. It will decompose. Worms love pit moss. So the beauty of our product is worms will be attracted to it. They'll create even more aeration as they eat the pit moss, and then they'll leave behind worm castings to help fertilize the garden as
It's
well.
an amazing product in itself.
Right.
Okay. Well, let's move on into some other
Sure.
parts of this
Okay.
factory. All right, this is some of the other raw material that goes into the making.
So right now we are not using this sort of material, but
Okay.
it does go back to our R&D. So as I mentioned earlier, 3 years ago we were only using newsprint. Now we're using cardboard, a little bit of ad slicks, and other items with color. We get people sending us waste material all the time to trial and do R&D with. That's really important because even though we're not ready to do this today, we know that 34% of material that goes to landfill today is cellulosic fiber material.
Okay.
So we feel strongly our vision for the company would be to be able to have multiple regional pit moss recycling centers throughout the U.S. where we're taking that 34% cellulosic fiber that goes to the landfill today and we're turning it into pit moss. That would prevent us from needing to import peat or cocoa coir or other products, and all of our growing materials can come locally. But it does take many years of R&D to be able to integrate new feedstocks into our process.
Do you have trouble getting enough material to make your product?
No, today with the diversity of feedstock that we use, we're only scratching the surface with maybe 5% of the material just in Pittsburgh locally. And Pittsburgh's only one market. So there's a massive volume of waste material still going to landfills today. And again, we'd love to turn that all into pit moss at some point.
Okay, now is this something that gets all these products get shipped to you, or do you have to go pick up?
So we have different people that in some cases we have it delivered to us. In other cases, people are just trying to eliminate a waste product as a byproduct of what they do. So we do have some people that will deliver some material to us for free just because otherwise they need to pay to get it hauled off and taken to the landfill.
Now, since you're in Ambridge here, do you have any special deals set up with your own community that they homeowners drop stuff off, or the
So,
municipal pickups are handled here?
So we do not have any municipalities that are dropping material off, but we do have individual homeowners and some people that are consistently dropping off like boxes of material for us.
And you can use it.
Yep.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, it's good for
Yep.
the community. My favorite part of all factory tours is machinery, of course. I love machinery. I love tinkering with it. What are we looking at here in this part of the factory?
Yeah, so basically what we're doing is we're starting a process here where we take that raw material, that paper and cardboard that we're going to turn into pit moss, and we put it up into our first processing machine. It's actually called a ram grinder, made from Shuddy Buffalo Hammer Mills. They're actually partners and investors in our business with us.
Okay.
So they're relatively local up in Buffalo, New York. You'll see later in our filming where we will actually dump the raw material up into the hopper. That will go down into the ram grinder. The ram grinder will chop it up into pieces about 2 inches, 2 square inches. From there, it goes over to a hammer mill, which again is Shuddy Buffalo Hammer Mills product. So we fiberize our product to just the right level. It can't be too long, can't be too short. That's super important for creating the water holding capacity and aeration that we get with our pit moss. So as we fiberize it in the hammer mill, it will come through what's called a cyclone over here. And when it comes out the bottom of the cyclone, you'll see that we have raw, what we call fluff material.
Brian, what do I see? What is this?
So this is right after we go through the first part of our plant and we
Okay.
fiberize the material.
Okay.
This is the raw fiber that comes out before we mix it
Okay.
and turn it into pit moss.
Okay.
And you can see it's really, really fibrous material.
Oh my
There's
gosh,
a lot
yes.
of airspace.
Yep.
It's really water absorbent at this
Right.
point, but we're also fiberizing it the right size to leave some chunks of paper in there.
Okay.
In addition to just the right fiber length to turn it into pit moss. All that stuff has to be just right or we can't formulate the product perfectly.
Brian, what's this lovely little contraption I'm looking at?
Yeah, so we looked at earlier the front end of our process, which
Right.
is how we fiberize our paper. The second part, what we like to tell people is that's not super unique except for the fiber length and things like that we talked about.
Right.
We tell people at Pit Moss the magic is in the mixer.
Okay.
So what happens is we take that raw fluff material, which was really light and fibrous, and we formulate it in our mixer. We have some patents around this mixer and how we reformulate the product. And you see when you look at our finished product, there are little chunks or clumps or PEDs, as we like to call them.
Okay.
That's really important because those PEDs create the ability to hold water and air, but do not allow the product to compress upon itself and turn hard into a paper mache. So how we formulate in the mixer, we have some special ingredients that we add. We typically add some compost here to create some color. And the really critical thing is how we mix it, how long, how fast, how much other ingredients we add to create just that perfect physical environment for plant growth.
Okay. And that's what we're going to see coming out the chute.
Yeah, so we're going to show you some of the finished product coming out of the chute into our large form packaging, and from there we package into smaller bags for retail.
Brian, you got a flower pot full of peat moss and a pot full of pit moss. So tell us what we're going to be looking at. What are you going to do
so
here?
we're going to do a little demonstration to just show how well pit moss holds water
Okay.
and how it delivers that water to the root system
Okay.
compared to what we're used to seeing with peat moss.
Okay.
So this is actually a premium potting mix that we're using here
Okay.
that uses peat and has a wetting agent in it already.
Okay.
What we're going to do then is pour about 150 milliliters of water
Okay.
into each of these products, and then we'll just see what happens with it. The first thing that we saw in the first part of the demonstration is when we watered the peat moss material, the water really tried to float. You saw it really didn't want to absorb.
Right.
And then the water went to the sides of the pot
Right.
and then came immediately down the bottom. You could see almost as fast as we were pouring it, the water was coming out the bottom of the pot.
Right.
With the pit moss, on the other hand, you could see when we poured the water in it, it immediately absorbed that water, and you
Evenly
saw,
throughout the pot.
yeah, really evenly. And then not only that, then you saw very little water coming out the bottom of the pot.
Okay.
Next, we're going to show what happens on the inside of that pot when we turn these things over and look at how well they retain that moisture.
Okay. Brian, it's amazing seeing this is very moist. This basically has no water in it at all.
Yep.
Is that, am I seeing?
Yeah, I mean
what-
that is exactly what happens typically with peat moss. So because it's got the wetting agents, sometimes the wetting agents work better or worse. You can see typically what will happen is water will float on the top, it'll run down the sides, and then it'll come out the bottom.
Right.
So
So when you
in
dump
garden
this out,
centers-
this is as if water's never touched this.
exactly. So
There's
in
no water
garden
in here at
garden
all.
centers, that's why we're always overwatering.
Right.
We're trying to get it wetter and wetter and try to get some of the middle of that wet.
Mm-hmm.
But as you can see, we watered it twice and it didn't get wet in the middle at all.
And
With the pit moss, it absorbs
this is
it.
soaking wet. I
Exactly.
mean, this is all the water that you put on there is throughout the entire pot.
Yep. And not only is it wet, you'll notice there's still the structure there. So
Right.
there's still good aeration. There's still a lot of air for root growth. So you don't want it so wet that you create root rot. You
Mm-hmm.
still need to have that good aeration for the roots to be able to absorb water, air, and nutrients. And that's what our product provides.
Wow. 2/3 less water. I love it. I love it. All right, BJ, plant manager, general manager. You have got broad shoulders there, son.
Wear a lot of hats around
You wear
here.
a lot of hats on it, but I wanted to ask you about, I mean, general operations of the business, but in particular, there's a lot of quality control that goes into your day-to-day activities. It's not just throwing a switch, filling a bag, putting on a pallet, and say goodbye. There's
Yeah.
a lot that goes into what you do and oversee at the company.
That's a very good observation there. Here at Pitmoss, we like to check every product that we have. We put it through rigorous checks, recheck, make sure that the product size is perfect. We check the ranges on everything that we do here to make sure that it reaches the customer with the highest quality.
Okay, and in doing so, I notice you have bags that are actually dated. So you keep bags of your different batches for testing a year from now, even 2 years from now? Would
Yeah,
you,
that's correct.
So BJ, it's not just the final product. You guys are testing throughout the course of the manufacturing process?
That's correct. As the feedstock comes in, we want to send it out to the lab. We want to make sure that it's going to follow the specifications that we're looking for, and that's like kind of the beginning part of it. And then at the end, we also send it out to the lab and make sure that everything is up to specifications with them.
Okay, so beginning,
And
middle, end.
Yes.
You're following it straight through, and that's just quality care, quality concerns that you have for making sure the customer's happy all the way through?
Absolutely. We keep a gallon sample on standby at all times, that if there's any problems with it, we can go back with the product, we can research the product, we can look into what caused that problem.
So to me, that just shows that the company cares.
Absolutely,
You know,
absolutely.
you care, your staff cares, all the employees care. It's not just a big box type of company that says it wants to throw product out and doesn't care what's in the bag.
Correct. We want to make sure that the customer's reaching the highest standards that we can possibly have available to
And
them.
that's part of what you see and do on a day-to-day basis, from the beginning of the batch to the end of the batch to the testing of the batch. It's
Correct.
That's
There's
all on those little shoulders. of
several
yours.
several specifications that we look at throughout the batch production.
Well, I appreciate you letting us into your factory.
Okay, thank you so much.
Ashley, these are your three main products.
They are.
So what do you want to tell us about them?
Absolutely.
What's
So
the difference?
absolutely.
The bags look pretty.
they do. And this is our newest bag for this year that I love to talk about just because, well, you can see we redesigned the bag a little bit, but really what makes this product so special is it has all organic fertilizer. So you have mushroom compost, poultry manure, things that are absolutely organic. So you can grow your vegetables, your flowers in a completely organic mix. And that makes this potting soil a little different from what we have over here. So this is our performance blend. I like to call this our workhorse product. It performs every single time. You cannot go wrong potting anything in this product, but it does have a controlled release fertilizer. So that makes it not eligible for a completely organic qualification, but all those ingredients are derived naturally.
Okay.
And then we have a organic soil amendment. So if anyone likes to compost at home, mixing this in with your compost is going to give it a lot more air, make it a lot lighter. We know compost can get very heavy, so this adds a little more structure to your compost, so you can make your own soil mix at home if you'd like.
Is this as you're composting, or when you're done composting, you mix it?
Both. So pit moss, because we have that natural biologicals, I always like to say no one's out there fertilizing the rainforest, right? The plants in our planet have provided all the good natural nutrients that plants need to thrive. So pit moss does a great job of kind of recreating all those natural biologicals, So when you're adding it to your compost, it actually speeds up the rate of composting. So
Okay.
both mixing it in your compost helps speed it up, and also using it as an amendment to your compost to provide more of a complete soil for your plants.
Okay. Okay, Brian, from your experience with it, looking at the plants, how much bigger they get, in your experience over the years with it, what is causing these plants to get so much bigger?
Yeah, so not just in our experience, we have a ton of trial data.
Okay.
So we've actually worked with a consultant up in Michigan, Dr. Chuck Bethke. He used to run Michigan State's horticulture greenhouse.
Okay.
And some of the keys to our product that we know causes bigger, better plant growth is that, number one, we get initially much more root growth. The reason for that root growth is because we have really good both moisture and aeration in our product. So with a lot of other products, roots like to grow through the media,
Right.
and they're trying to grow to the bottom of the pot for air or water, where with our product, you get really extensive root growth throughout the entire media. So that's a really big differentiator. The second part of it, though, is, and we actually have studies that prove this, is that we know that the biological activity that happens naturally in pit moss allows for plants' roots to absorb more nutrients more readily. So it's really that combination of, number one, you're getting a bigger, more substantial root structure, and then secondary to that, the roots absorb more nutrients. So that's why we say with actually less water and less fertilizer, you can get a bigger, healthier plant.
It's almost sounding like this is a way to grow roots like they do hydroponically, only with a little bit of soil. Is that, am
Exactly.
I reading
No,
something more into that?
no,
or is
no,
that-
you're
'cause
exactly
that's the
right.
way hydroponic gardens operate. The roots go everywhere,
Yep.
and they soak up so much more water. This is, instead of having the big apparatuses of hydroponic gardens, pit moss is almost the same thing as a hydroponic gardens,
Yep.
but in individual flower pots.
You're exactly right. And if anything, our biggest challenge is getting people to understand you need to water much, much less
Okay.
because it holds water so well and plants will absorb the water as they need it. So very similar to like a hydroponic system from the root growth and the nutrient absorption.
Okay. The other, what would your response be to the question of pit moss being more expensive than the other name brands of potting soils?
Yeah, it definitely is. We are more in the premium brand level in terms of our pricing, but a couple of key things about that. We know our product just works much better to get a nice, bigger, healthier plant, and you can water a lot less. And over the life of the plant, you can fertilize less. So what we're telling people is, for a little bit more money on the front end, you can care a lot less for your plants, water them a lot less, so you reduce your labor savings. And over the life of the plant, you'll have to fertilize less, so you save money on fertilizer. The other thing we tell people all the time, and you see it as well as everybody else, people go in the garden center and they'll spend hours spending a couple $100 picking out the best plant.
Right.
And they like this plant and this flower just much better than the others. And then they go put it in the worst soil that they can buy
Right.
because it's cheap. We kind of talk about the opposite. You can go instead and buy the clearance plants for half price, spend half as much money, and within a matter of a few weeks, you're going to have a bigger, healthier plant if you buy the right soil to put it in.
All right, Ashley, we added a few more bags to our displays because there's more involved in pit moss than just a homeowner's flower pots.
Sure.
Or the homeowner's garden or something like that. Pit moss is involved commercially with a lot of other uses and growing and so forth. So
Absolutely.
why don't you go into some of the other detail as far as what
Absolutely.
else that pit moss, what you're doing with pit moss?
For sure. So we really did start growing commercially. So ground cover growers, people that are growing plants to sell into, Lowe's, Home Depot. So really big commercial farms. So we still have a grower grade product. So we have big super sacks. So you saw us filling out there in the factory. But really pit moss, because it's such a revolutionary new fiber structure, really lends itself to a bunch of other industries. So still growing plants, but something a little different we rolled out is our Canna Blend product. So that's specifically formulated as an amendment for medical cannabis purposes. And with the legalization of medical growing here in Pennsylvania, we've been working with a couple of the facilities here in Pennsylvania, and we see that as a great market opportunity for us. Another option we also have is it's actually a really great bedding. So anything from, I've actually have people buying it for bedding for their reptiles, but we actually have a product called Pit Moss Prestige for horse bedding.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
the really cool thing about that is Pit Moss has a unique ability to kind of crusty on top while absorbing a lot of the the liquid from your horses. And because it composts, it actually creates a product you can go and take right out to the field. So it really alleviates a lot of the smell of the ammonia. It keeps the bed very dry so it doesn't stick to the horse. And it also turns into a compost. A lot of horse breeders are actually paying people to remove the old bedding and
Right.
ship it out. This way you just plow it back into your field. So there's some really great opportunity there in just the horse bedding market and equine bedding market. And then the other opportunities are, we talked about worms loving pit moss. They
Right.
just gobble it up like cotton candy because it's so light and fluffy. So worm casters, there's a whole other product lines I'm sure you see on the shelf of just people selling worm castings.
Right.
So working with them to increase their productivity there. And then the probably other biggest opportunity is landscaping. So large landscapers, we talked about people not watering their shrubs or the trees and things that get planted in the landscaping arena, or even grass seed. So there's a lot of opportunities there to help landscapers provide better quality plants that require a lot less work on the homeowner's side of things.
Because that's an issue with the big landscapers. They go into a yard. It's up to the homeowner to make sure they're watering
Yes.
it. If they're not watering it, a lot of times it goes back to the landscaper
Exactly.
saying, you sold me a dead plant. So this way, the big landscapers, they're saving time and money because
Exactly.
the product is holding the water and they're not responsible for the homeowners trying to remember to
Yeah.
go back and do it.
Yeah, absolutely. So being able to guarantee a level of quality for their plants when they're doing all that transplanting and the initial installation. My husband in particular loves to mix grass seed with Prime and just throw it on our blank patches in the
Patches,
grass.
right.
So like we said, there's just so many opportunities for pit moss. We love hearing our customers kind of finding more unique
More
ways
use
to
all the
use
time.
it.
I'm sure you do. I'm sure you get a lot of letters from the people that have used it,
Now
what
it's
they
more
like it
Facebook
for,
messages, but-
well, what they're doing, what they like, and new ways of using
So it
it.
gives us great ideas.
Yeah. Ashley, go over some of the unique properties of what pit moss is. I mean, are there chemicals in it? And, what are some of the uniqueness that makes pit moss
Yeah.
so different from all the other growers?
Yeah, so definitely no sort of chemicals. One of the things we did early on was a big issue, specifically in the cannabis growing industry, but growing any sorts of vegetables is pesticides. So we're actually one of the only companies to be tested completely pesticide free, completely clean, safe growing media. So that's a really big part of what we do here is because we're handling it with, as you can see, a lot of care. It's not just being plowed in the open field and put in a bag. The whole process is quality controlled. So that makes us really unique just from the start as how we manufacture the product. But also just being able to allow for all those different elements, and starting with the raw paper allows it to be a lot more lightweight. So we talked about moving the planters around. I swear I haven't been doing a bunch of reps or anything this morning. This is actually only 14 pounds. I promise you, is that lightweight. And that just makes it really nice, easy to handle, a lot less dusty, and it's just an easier material to work with. It makes it, like I said, you're going to feel it. It's really soft and light and different from anything on the market, but those properties are exactly what your plants are looking for.
Wow, the future of soils. I like that slogan. I like the saying, but that's what it is. We appreciate you tuning in today to BPTV. Had a lot of fun here with the crew from Pit Moss. Really learned a lot. I enjoyed seeing how the product's made and what it's used for and how different it is from any other soil product you've used to date. So thank you for tuning in today. We enjoyed doing the show and we look forward to seeing you on the next segment. Thank you.